Welcome to B&B Movie Reviews. This week, we break up a sibling rivalry between two sisters, stop some Nazis with an unkillable legend, and we fly away one last time into the forever with those Guardians of the Galaxy. Stay right there, B&B is coming up next.
Lena's going back to art school soon anyway, aren't you, Lena?
No. Lena was a brave girl. She realized that art school was not serious, so she's come home. It was very brave. Good girl.
Shabash.
No, that's BS. Lena, tell them.
Leave it, Rhea.
I'm sorry, okay? But I think we just need to iron out a couple of things in this household. Lena is going to be an artist, and I am going to be a stunt woman.
Rhea, not that again. Please don't, please.
What?
Rhea, khuda ke liye, can you just stop it with the stunt woman crap? I mean, do you think your father sends you to that school for you to be a stunt woman?
Yes?
No.
Rhea puts her foot down when she lays down future plans for her and her sister, Lena, to her parents in the quirky, charming ode to Bollywood and action cinema, Polite Society. Brad, Polite Society. This movie I thought was extremely charming. I was smiling from ear to ear. It has a very kind of like Scott Pilgrim-ish type of vibe to it, with the energy that it brings to it, and a little bit of that tone that I kind of got that vibe a little bit.
I would not have necessarily selected Scott Pilgrim as an influence, but now that you say it, I can see it.
A little bit.
There is a heightened fantasy to the narrative that I really responded to up to a point. Okay. She's Rhea, played by Priya Kansara, is obsessed with action films. She wants to be a stunt performer, and that world sort of infects her imagination, and then that imagination is kind of where this film operates. And
it kind of lives there.
Sort of surprised by that, because some wild things happen over the course of this movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I like about the movie. Does feel like it's living in her imagination, and the way that it's conveyed visually through the storytelling with some of the interactions that she has with her sister, and how that kind of plays out with some other characters, like with the title cards that come up and things like that. I find that to be a lot of fun watching that.
Well, we've all had arguments with family members. Sibling rivalries is nothing new, but when they occur in Polite Society, suddenly one sister is kicking the other sister through a door, and it's absolutely absurd. At the same time, it matches the emotional truth of what's going on in that sequence.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell that the director, Nida Manzoor, is definitely pulling from a lot of influence that she has with things like Bollywood cinema. I mean, I read an article with her that she drew a lot of inspiration from Bollywood cinema and from action cinema that she grew up on, and she wanted to make a movie that was an homage and an inspiration to those films that she grew up on. And you can definitely see that in this movie.
I like the friendships throughout the film, like the friendships that Rhea has with her two schoolmates.
Yeah.
And, they're very honest. They are biting. They're not afraid to throw it back at each other. And they're not afraid to hurt each other's feelings either. But those feelings get mended, and when they get mended, the bonds are even more intense, and they all ultimately come together for each other and to save the day. And she wants her sister to stay with her dreams because she doesn't want to give up her own dream. And so the sister kind of represents this fear of abandonment, not just of a family abandonment, but of that abandonment of dreams. And she can't imagine a future of her with herself without the stunt performer fantasy. When we finally know what is actually going on with this fiancé, it is also incredible. Like it is absurd, and that absurdity matches the fantasy life that has been going throughout the rest of this film.
Yeah.
But to me, the fantasy life is all about, again, matching the emotional truth.
Yeah.
Right? And so
Yeah.
that works. But then when outside of the fantasy life is equally, if not more so, absurd, it does a disservice to the metaphor of the action sequences.
And it felt like there was a disconnect there because her motivations didn't seem like they were aligning with what we learned about the plot with the
But if what actually is going on as it's revealed at the end of this movie, then she should have been behaving even more intensely, right?
Exactly. But that's the thing. It's like I didn't know if she was justified for that without her knowing that. It seemed like if she didn't come to that realization, the justification for her doing what she was doing seemed like it would have been.
It's melodrama, and melodrama is about these extremes being told to capture an internal truth.
Yeah.
And for me, that all works until the extremes are actually just extreme.
What's your rating for this?
I enjoyed it. I think it's very funny.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend it. We're the B&B show, so that means we give it a B+.
Yeah.
And I got to give it a B+.
Same, I'm with you. I had an enjoyable time watching this movie, so this is a B+ for me. So B+ for Polite Society. When we come back, we go and hunt some Nazis. Stay right there.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
Get down on your knees.
These bags are full of gold!
Get down on your knees, Grandpa!
Shoot the fucker!
Give up!
Thanks for the gold!
We got gold! Thank you, old
When Tommy's life and gold is threatened by retreating Nazis during the end of the war, they quickly learn that they have pushed the wrong man in the mythic tale, Sisu. Brian.
Yes.
Wrong man. Don't mess with the Tommy.
No,
you're going to get a knife to the head.
Yes.
How did you
are.
react to the action of this film?
I liked it. It's so funny because we saw the trailer for this movie and the trailer played a lot, because it also like highlights and marketed as, from the producers of John Wick.
Right.
So a lot of times you're going into this movie thinking, oh man, this is going to be like John Wick and like World War II. It's like John Wick with Nazis. It's not really that. You know what's interesting? With the score and the way this movie is shot, it reminded me when we were watching it of like a Frank Frazetta painting.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's like, I just got that vibe of Frank Frazetta. Like, I could see like a painting with this character.
Absolutely.
That he did.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we're recording on the 10-year anniversary of Frank Frazetta's passing. I don't know if you knew
Really?
that.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Wow.
I agree with you. It's very pulpy. I actually think that a lot of the influences in this film are the same influences that you see in Polite Society. And you can see like the chapter headings that are taken right out of Inglourious Bastards and
Yeah.
previous, exploitation films of that kind of ilk. And there is a fantasy element to Sisu that is slowly played with and revealed over the course of the film.
Yeah.
The mythology around what Sisu is, and this reference to the Russian folklore of Koshai the Immortal.
Okay.
And like they play with that, and but you still, for most of this movie, you're like, well, he's just a guy who is going up against impossible odds, but he's surviving John Wick style.
Yeah.
But as the film progresses, you go, wait, hold on. is he Koshai the Immortal? And if I had one complaint about Sisu is I wish they pushed that mythology a little bit more. I wish they pushed the fantasy a little bit more to explain some of the ridiculous situations that Atami gets out of.
But that's the one thing I like. I do agree. I do think they probably should have pushed that. But I think for a lot of people who watch this movie and who may not pick up on that, I love that slow reveal of him feeling like he is just a man, you know, like being pushed by these Nazis, stealing his gold, and then going through all these situations as we go through those chapter markers and we get further along into the movie, and we slowly, as the Nazis are starting to realize, as we, the audience, are starting to realize that, yeah, is he this immortal character that you were referring to? And I love that journey that the movie takes us on.
And that journey is so slow, right? And I like the pace of that.
I like it too.
I love when we're first introduced to the character, panning for gold, chipping away. There's a sequence where he has his shirt off and you see the bullet holes and the stabbings and all these scars all over his body. He has really gone through it. And then as he continues to go through it in this film, you start to wonder, like, well, maybe he does just refuse to die. Maybe there is something fantastical happening. And I do think it takes it to a point where it has to be fantastical, even though the film never firmly says it's fantastical.
I like also one thing I liked about the characterization of Atami in the movie Sisu was he doesn't speak for the most part. And as we were watching this movie, I was like, this is interesting. I like this idea, which plays more into like that mythology of
we project everything onto him, right?
Yeah.
So we only have the body language, the physical performance to really go on. And it's a wonderful physical performance. But we, as the audience, project our thoughts and feelings onto that character. And then the other characters around them project their thoughts and feelings onto that character.
Yeah, I love that. We get to that last scene.
I wish he had stayed quiet. I wish he had been a little mum all the way through. But they got to be a little cute at the end.
I know. That was a little upsetting.
But the landscape, the production design is so incredible. You really do feel like you are there in the battle, in those fields. Even the CGI work that we do get in this movie is extremely solid and very picturesque. And that's where you really get the sense of a Frank Frazetta painting. The war-torn, desolated towns of this film. That feels like a Frazetta backdrop.
Yeah, I loved all that. And of course, like, you're right, the production design, the one sequence, that chapter where you go into the landmines and everything that has to do, although that whole sequence was done so well, the reveal of that, how they kind of slowly build up.
The landmine sequence is so good that maybe the film doesn't recover from it. But this is a film you want to see on a big screen with a crowd. I would get on your apps, whatever app you use, and hunt for a theater that's pretty darn full because you want to hear that audience reaction.
I thoroughly enjoyed watching this movie. What's your rating for this one?
Also a B+. A different kind of B+ than Polite Society, but still a B+. You should check it out.
Highly recommend this one. This is a B+ as well. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Sisu. So when we return, we are going to spend some time with those Guardians of the Galaxy. Stay right there.
Jason, let's go see your room.
That's not right. How was it? Is it good?
You must find Counter-Earth familiar.
Counter-Earth?
I visited your planet many years ago.
Earth hasn't been my planet in a long time.
Your people had wonderful spirit. The art and music and literature were some of the finest in the universe. Earth would be a fabulous place were it not for the ignorance and bigotry.
Okay.
It inspired me to create Counter-Us.
I don't care.
All of the good and none of the bad.
I don't need another speech by some impotent whack job whose mother didn't love him, rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.
The High Evolutionary explains to Peter Quill about his plan to perfect the universe in James Gunn's send-off to his Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy with Volume 3. Oh, long time coming, Brian.
We finally made it. It took a long time to get the send-off of these characters that we love so much.
Was it a satisfying send-off?
Yes, it was. No spoilers. We're going to get into spoilers a little bit later, but I think this was a great send-off for these characters. I think James Gunn, he just understands what makes these characters tick. The relationships between these characters, I think, really work, between the dynamics between all of them, whether you're talking about Peter Quill and Rocket, Mantis and Drax. There's all these different dynamics, and all of them seem to work, and he does it beautifully, not just throughout the trilogy, but in this movie as well.
The entire trilogy is a highly emotional story.
It very much is.
And it's been building to this moment.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anxiety when you get to a send-off like this one.
Yeah.
And you bring a lot of worries, you bring a lot of anticipation, and it's a hard thing to meet, from the audience perspectives, but also the filmmaker's perspective. And miraculously, I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy brings that bridge of audience and character together in a shocking, surprising, but also a deeply satisfying way.
Very much so. And I got to talk a little bit about James Gunn, because you can tell, I mean, we've seen a couple of different trilogies within the MCU and trilogies just in general, where a lot of times, sometimes you don't know if they have a complete through line, that they know when they make that first movie that they know the ending to that third movie or to the story arc that they want to tell. And watching this movie and seeing how it ends and seeing how the whole movie plays out, I just feel like James Gunn understood the story that he wanted to tell almost 10 years ago in 2014 when the first movie came out. He knew where he wanted these characters to end up, and you feel that. And I think that's one reason why it feels so satisfying when you get to the end of this movie, because it feels like a complete and cohesive story over the course of these last 9 years.
Characters have gone through a lot, and I don't know if James Gunn knew all the ins and outs of that plot.
Yeah.
But I think he did truly understand where he wanted these characters to end as a group and as individuals. And what I really liked about Guardians of the Galaxy is the way that this film, Volume 3, mixes the beauty and the ugliness of life. You know, it's not afraid to be revolting.
Yeah.
It's not afraid to being scary or sad or tragic.
Yeah.
But amongst all those negative feelings are tremendous highs, and ultimately the highs outweigh the lows.
It's so satisfying because we see characters like Rocket or like Peter Quill or Nebula who are in these dire situations, these traumatic situations, specifically Rocket, because this movie really focuses on his backstory and where he came from, and seeing them come out of those situations, it gives you such a satisfying ending. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are responding to in these movies.
It gives you a villain that is truly horrifying. The High Evolutionary is repugnant, but you also kind of understand his cruel logic. You can understand how a person could get to being that person.
Yeah.
And how what he is trying to do in evolving sentient life is such an affront to this ragtag group of outsiders who sort of celebrate non-conformity, you know. and Chikwudi Iwuji as the High Evolutionary, I think, gives one of the best Marvel villain performances that we've seen.
Yeah. When you get into some of the backstory with Rocket and how, you know, inviting and comforting he is in those first couple of scenes with Rocket in the beginning, but you know that, like you're saying, it's all a front, and we're waiting for that reveal to them, those characters, the reveal of who he truly is. And that's the scary part, because we know that that's coming. And it's frightening to see that, because we know what his intentions are with Batch 89.
And we've known since the first film that Rocket has had a very dark history.
Yeah.
And now we finally get to see it via flashback, and those flashbacks are extremely dark, but they're also so sweet and beautiful.
Yeah.
And those friends that he had growing up are some of the most lovely additions to the MCU.
Yeah.
And we won't talk about spoilers, but
not yet. But
they're not around anymore.
Not yet. But it's so funny because Volume 2 I really enjoy. I mean, Volume 2, and we'll get into rankings.
Are we?
Yeah,
okay.
we'll get into rankings.
Okay. Yeah,
but in Volume 2, like when he's they kind of separate the group in the second movie, and when he's with Yondu, like you see Rocket pushing people away. In this movie, you start to understand those reasonings behind that. And that's what I enjoy seeing, because you see, and even in the first movie, like just how Rocket is, you see where all of that originated from. You see where all of that is coming from. And that's what I enjoy seeing in this movie.
Well, that second film is all about Yondu teaching Rocket that you don't need to push people away. You don't have to be a jerk to avoid love. That, it's good to love, even if love will sometimes betray you. It's best to try to have the attempt. And then in this film, we understand how Rocket got to that place where he needed Yondu's lesson.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. So those are our thoughts on Volume 3, but we're not done with the conversation yet. When we come back, we're going to get into spoilers. Yes, you heard that right, heavy spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, so stay right there.
Every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer. With your help, we can end breast cancer. We are all stronger together.
Chance to talk. Oh yeah, because that's another one that kind of, All right, welcome back to B&B Movie Reviews. So now we are going to get into spoiler talk with Guardians of the Galaxy. So, Brad, they all live.
They all live. What? I mean, the core group lives.
Yes.
Not all. There's a lot of people who die in this movie.
But our Guardians that we know, they all live.
Yeah. I love how this film from the jump really puts all these characters into peril.
Yeah.
And throughout the movie, you keep going like, oh, is that the moment where Drax is going to die? Oh, is that when Gamora's going to die? Oh, is that when Peter's going to die?
I know.
And then no one ends up dying except everyone around them. We blow up a whole planet. Counter-Earth.
Counter-Earth is gone.
That poor little bat family exploded.
Oh, my God. Oh, I know, right?
This movie is extremely dark
It's
at
extremely
times.
dark.
Like, extremely. It's PG-13. This is like old school PG-13. This is like Gremlins, Stripe in the water melting away, leaving a skeleton behind PG-13.
Yeah.
We have not seen a PG-13 movie like this in a while.
We talked a little bit in the last segment about Rocket and his friends. So we have Lila, we have Floor, and we have Tease. And their
shot to death.
Their endings are very tragic, and where that leaves Rocket and how that affects him moving forward. And one of the moments that really got me in this movie is like there's a segment where the High Evolutionary is with Rocket and they're going through like some tests, and he sees the sky and he says sky, and he goes back and tells his friends about the sky, and they're looking up and he's like, is that the sky? He's like, no, that's the ceiling. And so when Lila gets shot and killed and she's looking up and she says sky, I was just like, that is so
How many times did you cry during this movie?
Oh, dude, it was like that whole third act, it was just like waterfalls, man.
Honestly, from the beginning, when Adam Warlock shows up and decimates Nowhere and puts Rocket into this life-threatening situation, I was choked up, and I carried that choked up expression through the entire runtime until about that moment you're describing, and then I was pretty much crying the last third of this movie.
Yeah, and even when he has the moment where he sees his friends in the afterlife right before they revive Rocket, and Lila says, your journey's not done yet. It's like they're the hands. I forget the line that she says, but then they're the hands that guide you. And
there's the hands that made you, and there's the hands that guide you.
And such a beautiful line. And then, like, I love how it evolves to him accepting his name, and even in the afterlife, where he's like, "I'm not a raccoon."
He comes across all the little baby raccoons and then reads, their species designation and sees raccoon.
Yeah.
And then finally, after 3 movies, embraces the name Rocket Raccoon. Like, oh, it's such a hell yeah moment.
Yeah.
But it is, filled with such a somber feeling. But at the end of the day, that bittersweetness is more sweet than bitter.
Very much so. And it's like that for all the characters. I mean, of course, like, this is Rocket's movie, but there's other storylines with all the other Guardians. They all have their individual stories. And the other one that I connected to and I thought really worked was Peter Quill and Gamora. And I know we've always wanted to see in a traditional film, we would always see them get back together. It's like he says, the will they, won't they of Cheers, Sam and Diane and everything like that. But this is not his Gamora. His Gamora is dead. She's gone. And
it embraces the ridiculousness of comic book storytelling and treats it honestly. They are not going to fall back in love and be the same couple. That couple is over.
Yeah.
And a lesser film and a lesser filmmaker would have just given you what they think the audience wants. These two happily ever after.
Yeah.
All these characters happily ever after. But no, this is true growth. One of my great frustrations about the original series Star Trek movies is that the characters were never allowed to grow after each movie. Like Sulu, got on his ship, but that was pretty much it. Here we actually get to see characters put into new places, into new roles, and embrace those roles. And, possibilities, brand new possibilities are left for us. This movie is extremely additive to the narrative.
Character arcs. I mean, even some of the storylines of Drax, like when Nebula says you weren't meant to be a destroyer, you were meant to be a dad, knowing that he was a man that lost his daughter. And then what we see with what the High Evolutionary was trying to create this new civilization of all these children, and then bringing them onto nowhere, and then seeing Drax, being able to dance when he says dance is for idiots, and, seeing Nebula finally having a home. I thought Nebula's storyline, it felt like it kind of peaked with Infinity War and Endgame, and I know we were talking about that a little bit, and her storyline, I kind of struggled with a little bit in this movie.
Oh, I love it so much.
But I think it does work, her finding a home, going
and
through
a role as a
went
leader,
through.
right?
Yeah.
When we first met her, she was a one-dimensional bad guy in the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
But Karen Gillan has taken that character, who was very dismissible, and created something very essential to the story.
Oh, very much.
And now in a place of power that you couldn't possibly have imagined 3 films ago.
Yeah.
And leading nowhere and rebuilding nowhere.
Yeah.
Honestly, you say that her storyline peaked in Infinity War. I think it elevated in Infinity War. That relationships that she built with Rocket after the blip.
Yes.
But now here she is. She is the only one kind of holding the group together now that Peter is spiraling.
Yeah. So this movie was just fantastic all the way around. What's your rating for this?
Huge B+. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's, in my opinion, the best Marvel movie we've had since Endgame.
Okay, I agree.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. This is a B+ for me. Before we go, the Guardians trilogy ranking. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, so I'm in the camp that really enjoys Volume 2. Volume 2 remains my favorite of the Guardians films.
I think we're in the minority, but I love it.
Then I like 1, and then I like 3, but I could see 3 moving beyond 1 after a couple of watches. This is a movie that's only going to grow as you rewatch it.
Your ranking is the same as mine.
Right, that's shocking.
I think we're in the minority with 2.
Definitely.
I think 2 is incredible, but 2, 1, and 3, but they are all fantastic. A great trilogy.
But the best Guardians appearance is Thor: Love and Thunder, right?
Sure. That's going to do it for our episode. To review what we've talked about on this episode, Polite Society, we gave a B+ for both of us. Sisu, we gave a B+ as well. And also for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a B+ for both of us. So another episode with pluses all the way around.
We just like movies.
We love movies, man. So, all right, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies.